My beloved child. Pause here for a moment, because what is unfolding now did not begin a year ago, or even yesterday. It began quietly, in a place where ordinary mornings become extraordinary without anyone realizing it at first. There are moments that arrive so gently they almost pass unnoticed, yet they carry the power to change the way a heart understands everything that came before. This is one of those moments. Don't skip. Because something important is waiting for you, and every sentence brings you one step closer to understanding why this message found you today. As the morning light stretched across the horizon, someone whose thoughts have been circling around you woke with an unusual sense of clarity. Nothing dramatic happened. No loud announcement interrupted the silence. Instead, it was one small realization, so simple that it almost escaped their attention. Yet the longer they sat with it, the more impossible it became to ignore. Have you ever noticed how the truth rarely arrives with noise? It often whispers first. That whisper is where this story begins. For a long time, they believed they understood what their heart was trying to tell them. They thought they had organized every memory, every emotion, every unanswered question into neat little places where they could stop thinking about them. But this morning, something unexpected happened. A single detail connected itself to another, then another, until everything they believed suddenly looked different. Not because the past changed. Because their understanding finally did. Stay till the end, because this quiet discovery carries more meaning than either of you could have imagined. They found themselves remembering conversations they had almost forgotten. Tiny moments that once seemed ordinary suddenly returned with remarkable clarity. A smile they couldn't explain. A feeling that lingered long after a goodbye. A strange sense of comfort whenever your memory appeared unexpectedly. At first, they tried to dismiss it. They told themselves it was coincidence. Yet the more they reflected, the more every memory seemed connected by an invisible thread that had been there all along. Perhaps you've experienced something similar. Perhaps you've wondered why certain people continue crossing your thoughts even when life becomes busy. Sometimes the heart notices patterns long before the mind is ready to understand them. That realization settled quietly within them this morning. And with it came a question they could no longer avoid. What if I've misunderstood something beautiful all this time? That question stayed with them. It followed them through every ordinary task. It echoed in every quiet pause. Not as fear. Not as regret. But as gentle curiosity. Because curiosity has a remarkable way of opening doors that certainty keeps closed. Something important is waiting for you. Keep listening. As they looked outside, watching another ordinary morning begin, they realized the world itself had not changed at all. The streets looked familiar. The sky carried its usual colors. Life continued exactly as it always had. Only one thing was different. The way they were seeing everything. Isn't it fascinating how one new understanding can transform an entire story without changing a single event? That is exactly what happened. Suddenly, moments involving you no longer appeared random. They appeared meaningful. Not because someone forced that conclusion. Because it finally felt honest. Every unanswered feeling that had quietly rested beneath the surface began arranging itself into a clearer picture. The picture was incomplete. But for the first time, it actually made sense. Don't skip. There is still one piece missing. The remarkable part is not what they discovered. The remarkable part is what that discovery awakened inside them. A quiet hope. The kind that asks for nothing. The kind that simply waits with patience instead of demanding immediate answers. Hope often arrives disguised as understanding. And understanding changes people more deeply than excitement ever can. This morning became different because they stopped searching for dramatic signs and started paying attention to gentle truths. That was the turning point. Without realizing it, they began seeing your place in their story with fresh eyes. Not through assumptions. Not through imagination. But through appreciation. They recognized qualities they had overlooked before. Your kindness. Your quiet resilience. The way your presence seemed to leave peace behind even after conversations ended. These weren't discoveries about who you suddenly became. They were discoveries about what had always been there. Sometimes we only recognize something precious after we've spent enough time growing ourselves. Growth changes perspective. Perspective reveals value. And value creates gratitude. As these thoughts continued unfolding, another realization appeared. One that surprised even them. The moments they once considered insignificant now felt like the strongest chapters of all. Not because they were perfect. Because they were genuine. Stay a little longer. The story is only beginning. There remains one quiet truth they have not yet allowed themselves to fully admit. They are standing at the edge of that realization now, almost ready to speak it aloud. But before those words can be understood, something else must happen first. Because today's discovery was only the beginning of a much larger picture. And tomorrow may reveal the missing piece that finally explains why this ordinary morning has felt unlike any other. A quiet realization settled in long after the morning had already begun, and strangely, it refused to fade. Instead of disappearing like so many passing thoughts, it continued growing stronger with every ordinary moment. That was when they understood this feeling was asking to be noticed, not ignored. Stay with this for a little longer. Because something important is still unfolding, and the next piece cannot be rushed. There was no dramatic scene. No unexpected interruption. Only a peaceful silence that invited reflection. They found themselves revisiting memories they had once placed in the background of their life. At first, each memory seemed unrelated, like scattered pages from different stories. Yet as they lingered on each one, an unexpected pattern began to appear. It was almost as if every forgotten detail had been patiently waiting for this exact morning. The way you once encouraged someone without expecting recognition. The quiet confidence you carried during uncertain moments. The kindness you offered even when nobody seemed to notice. None of these moments felt extraordinary when they happened. Yet together, they formed something impossible to overlook. Have you ever wondered whether the smallest parts of who you are leave the deepest impression? Perhaps they do. Perhaps the things you never think twice about are the very things another heart remembers the longest. That thought stayed with them. It followed every step they took. It returned during every quiet pause. And instead of creating confusion, it brought surprising peace. Don't skip. The next realization changed the direction of their entire morning. They stopped asking themselves whether they had missed an opportunity. Instead, they began asking a gentler question. What have I finally learned that I couldn't understand before? That single question opened a completely different door. Suddenly, they weren't looking backward with regret. They were looking forward with gratitude. Gratitude for every conversation. Every shared smile. Every unexpected crossing of paths. Every moment that quietly shaped their understanding without demanding attention. Sometimes life prepares an answer long before we know the question. Perhaps that is why certain memories remain with us. Not to keep us trapped in yesterday, but to prepare us for tomorrow. As these reflections continued, something even quieter appeared. It wasn't a voice. It wasn't a sign. It was simply an unmistakable feeling that peace often arrives after patience has done its quiet work. For the first time in a long while, they no longer felt the need to force clarity. They allowed understanding to arrive naturally. And in that calm space, your place in their thoughts felt different than ever before. Not larger. Simply clearer. Stay till the end. Because the most meaningful discovery had not yet reached the surface. There was one memory they kept returning to without realizing it. Not because it was the biggest. Because it was the most sincere. A simple exchange. A few ordinary words. A moment that almost anyone else would have forgotten. Yet somehow, it remained. Why? That question lingered longer than any other. The answer arrived quietly. Because genuine moments never need to be extraordinary to become unforgettable. The heart remembers honesty long after it forgets perfection. That truth surprised them more than anything else this morning. It reminded them that meaningful connections are rarely built from grand gestures alone. They are built through consistency. Through kindness. Through showing up with authenticity again and again. As they reflected on everything they had discovered, another gentle realization appeared. Perhaps this journey was never about finding someone entirely new. Perhaps it was about finally seeing familiar moments with wiser eyes. That thought brought unexpected calm. Not certainty. Not final answers. Just peaceful confidence that some stories unfold at exactly the pace they need. Something important is waiting for you. Because what they uncovered this morning has already begun changing the way they see tomorrow. Yet there is one final detail they have kept quietly to themselves. It is not because they are uncertain. It is because they are carefully choosing the right moment to understand it completely. And when that moment arrives, the next chapter will reveal why one ordinary memory suddenly became the key to everything they have been feeling all along. The afternoon arrived more quietly than expected, yet the discovery from the morning refused to lose its warmth. If anything, it became even clearer with every passing hour. Some realizations do not arrive all at once. They unfold gently, allowing the heart to understand them one layer at a time. Stay with this journey, because what seemed like a single discovery is becoming something far more meaningful than anyone expected. They paused for a moment and looked back over the path that had quietly brought them here. Nothing about that path appeared extraordinary at first glance. It was made of ordinary conversations, brief encounters, shared laughter, thoughtful silences, and little moments that most people would overlook. Yet today, those moments felt connected, almost like stars that had always formed the same constellation, waiting for someone to notice. Isn't it remarkable how understanding changes what memory chooses to illuminate? The more they reflected, the more one truth continued returning. Some people leave an impression without ever trying. Their kindness becomes unforgettable. Their calm becomes memorable. Their presence quietly becomes part of someone else's story. That realization brought a gentle smile. Not because every question had been answered, but because the questions themselves no longer felt heavy. They had become invitations instead of uncertainties. Don't skip. The next thought surprised even them. They realized they had spent so much time wondering what the future might bring that they had almost forgotten to appreciate everything the present had already revealed. How many beautiful moments had quietly passed by simply because they were waiting for something bigger? Perhaps more than they realized. Perhaps more than any of us realize. For the first time, they stopped searching for extraordinary proof. Instead, they began trusting the quiet consistency of genuine feelings. That change altered everything. The little details suddenly mattered more than dramatic moments ever could. A remembered conversation. An unexpected smile. A sentence that lingered longer than it should have. A peaceful feeling that appeared whenever your memory returned without invitation. None of those moments demanded attention. Yet together, they carried remarkable meaning. Something important is waiting for you. Because another realization was slowly approaching. As they continued through the day, they noticed something they had never truly paid attention to before. Whenever thoughts of you appeared, the hurried pace of their mind seemed to soften. The endless noise faded into the background. Everything became just a little quieter. Just a little clearer. And perhaps that was the discovery they had been searching for all along. Not excitement alone. Not mystery alone. But peace. Real peace rarely announces itself. It simply arrives, and stays. The more they welcomed that feeling, the more they understood why this morning had felt different from every other morning before it. It was not because life had suddenly changed. It was because their perspective finally had. Stay till the end. The story has not yet revealed its brightest moment. Another memory surfaced unexpectedly. This one was almost forgotten. It was a simple exchange that lasted only a few moments. Nothing dramatic happened. No promises were made. Yet somehow, that brief encounter continued shining in their memory brighter than many larger events. Why? Because authenticity leaves echoes that time cannot easily erase. That understanding settled gently into their heart. And with it came a quiet appreciation they had never fully expressed, even to themselves. They no longer wondered whether certain moments mattered. They knew they did. Not because they were perfect. Because they were real. As the afternoon light slowly shifted, another unexpected feeling emerged. It was anticipation. Not impatient anticipation. Peaceful anticipation. The kind that believes every meaningful story unfolds exactly when both hearts are ready to understand it. There was no rush anymore. Only quiet confidence. Only gratitude. Only the growing awareness that this morning's discovery was opening the door to something even deeper. Don't leave just yet. There is still one question they have not answered. It is the question they carried silently throughout the entire day. A question so gentle that it almost disappeared beneath every other thought. Yet by evening, it would become impossible to ignore. And when that answer finally rises to the surface, you will understand why today's quiet discovery was never the ending of the story. It was only the beginning of a chapter neither of you could have fully imagined until now. Evening arrived with a different kind of stillness, and somehow that stillness carried more meaning than words ever could. The discovery from this morning had traveled through every hour of the day, quietly growing stronger instead of fading away. Some truths do not ask for immediate attention. They simply remain, waiting until the heart is calm enough to recognize their value. Stay with this moment. Because another layer is about to unfold, and it may help you see this story from an entirely new perspective. As the light outside slowly softened, they found themselves returning to the same question again and again. What was I truly discovering this morning? At first, they believed the answer was about you. But as they reflected more deeply, they realized it was also about themselves. Sometimes another person becomes the mirror that gently reveals who we are becoming. Without realizing it, your presence had encouraged patience. Your quiet way of moving through life had reminded them that kindness never loses its strength, even when it goes unnoticed. That realization stayed with them. It became the quiet center of every thought that followed. Don't skip. The most meaningful part is only beginning. For a long time they believed meaningful connections were built from extraordinary moments. Today they understood something different. They are built from ordinary moments remembered with extraordinary gratitude. A conversation that lasted only minutes. A smile exchanged without expectation. A thoughtful word offered at exactly the right time. A memory that refused to disappear, even after countless new days had come and gone. None of those moments demanded attention when they happened. Yet together they formed something remarkably steady. Something that felt less like coincidence. And more like quiet purpose. Have you ever noticed how certain memories return without invitation? Not to distract you. Not to confuse you. Simply to remind you that some moments deserve another look. Perhaps that is what happened today. Perhaps this morning was never asking them to discover something new. Perhaps it was inviting them to appreciate what had quietly been growing all along. Something important is waiting for you. Because one final piece had not yet found its place. As the evening became quieter, they noticed something unexpected. For the first time in a long while, they were no longer trying to predict tomorrow. Instead, they were grateful for today. That simple shift changed everything. The future no longer felt distant. It felt welcoming. Not because every answer had arrived, but because peace had arrived first. And peace has a remarkable way of preparing us for the answers that come later. The discovery from this morning suddenly seemed much larger than they first imagined. It wasn't simply about remembering you. It was about recognizing the quiet influence genuine people leave behind. Influence that asks for nothing. Influence that grows naturally. Influence that remains long after ordinary moments have passed. Stay till the end. The evening still held one final surprise. Without planning to, they opened an old conversation in their mind. Not to relive it. Not to analyze it. Only to appreciate it. As they remembered those simple words, something remarkable happened. They noticed how calm they felt. No uncertainty. No confusion. Only appreciation. Only quiet hope. Only the growing certainty that meaningful connections are strengthened by honesty, patience, and time. That realization became the greatest discovery of all. Not because it answered every question. Because it changed the questions themselves. Instead of asking, "What if?" they quietly found themselves asking, "What beautiful possibilities might still be waiting ahead?" That single thought filled the rest of the evening with gentle optimism. The story no longer felt unfinished. It felt beautifully in progress. Don't leave yet. There is one detail they have not shared. It appeared just before the day came to an end. Small enough that almost anyone else would have overlooked it. Yet the moment they noticed it, everything they had discovered this morning seemed to connect into one quiet, meaningful picture. Tomorrow's reflection will begin with that single detail. And once it is revealed, you may understand why today's discovery was only the first whisper of something far more beautiful still waiting to unfold. Before the stars quietly claimed the sky, one final moment unfolded so gently that it could have been missed by anyone moving too quickly. Yet they stopped. They listened to the silence around them, and within that silence, the discovery from the morning finally revealed another layer of its meaning. Stay with this story. Because the smallest moments often carry the greatest reminders, and something important is still waiting for you. It wasn't a message on a screen. It wasn't an unexpected conversation. It wasn't anything that demanded attention. It was a quiet realization that arrived from within. As they reflected on the entire day, they noticed something they hadn't felt in a very long time. Their thoughts about you no longer felt uncertain. They felt peaceful. That difference mattered more than they could explain. Peace has a way of answering questions that words never can. It doesn't rush. It doesn't insist. It simply remains. And the longer it remains, the clearer everything becomes. Have you ever experienced a moment when your heart became calm before your mind could explain why? That was exactly where they found themselves. For months, they believed they were waiting for the perfect answer. Today they discovered they had actually been learning how to recognize it. Don't skip. The next realization may be the quiet turning point of this journey. They began remembering not only what had happened between you, but also how those moments had made them feel. Feelings of encouragement. Feelings of comfort. Feelings of being understood without needing every thought explained. Those emotions had never truly disappeared. They had simply been resting beneath the surface, waiting for the right time to be noticed again. Sometimes the heart protects meaningful memories until we are ready to appreciate them fully. Perhaps that is why this morning felt so different. Not because something completely new appeared. Because something valuable was finally seen with fresh eyes. As the evening deepened, gratitude quietly replaced every unnecessary question. Instead of wondering whether certain moments mattered, they found themselves grateful that those moments had happened at all. That gratitude changed the atmosphere within them. Everything felt lighter. Everything felt clearer. And in that clarity, another gentle understanding emerged. Meaningful connections are rarely built in a single unforgettable day. They are woven together through countless ordinary days that slowly become extraordinary when viewed together. Something important is waiting for you. Because one memory still remained. It was the simplest of them all. A brief exchange. A sincere smile. A feeling of ease that neither of you tried to create. It simply happened. Looking back now, they realized why that memory had quietly stayed with them. Authenticity always leaves a lasting impression. Nothing forced. Nothing exaggerated. Just genuine kindness meeting genuine appreciation. That realization became the quiet center of everything they had discovered today. The more they accepted it, the more hopeful tomorrow began to feel. Not because they expected everything to happen immediately, but because they understood that meaningful stories continue unfolding when patience is allowed to do its quiet work. Stay till the end. One final thought appeared before the day came to a close. What if this morning wasn't the destination? What if it was simply the beginning of seeing everything differently? That question remained unanswered. Not because the answer was missing. Because tomorrow would naturally reveal the next piece. As they looked toward a brand new day, they carried something they hadn't noticed when they first woke up. A quiet confidence. A peaceful expectation. A gentle appreciation for every small moment that had brought them here. And just before they stepped away from their thoughts for the night, one unexpected realization settled into their heart. There is still one beautiful truth connected to you that has not yet been spoken aloud. When that truth finally finds its moment, everything discovered this morning will make even deeper sense, and the journey you've been following from the very beginning will reveal why every quiet step has been leading toward that single, unforgettable realization. A brand new morning arrived, carrying the same gentle light, but something within them had quietly changed overnight. It wasn't because the world looked different. It was because the understanding they had discovered yesterday had settled deeply enough to become part of the way they now saw everything around them. Some realizations need time to become wisdom, and this was one of them. Stay with this journey, because what seemed complete is about to reveal another beautiful layer. Before the day became busy, they allowed themselves a few moments of complete stillness. No distractions. No rushing ahead. Just quiet reflection. As they looked back over everything that had unfolded, one thought continued returning with remarkable clarity. The discovery wasn't about finding something that had been missing. It was about finally recognizing something that had always been present. That sentence remained with them. The more they repeated it, the more meaningful it became. Sometimes life does not ask us to search farther. Sometimes it gently invites us to see more clearly. Have you ever looked at something familiar and suddenly noticed a beauty that had somehow escaped your attention for so long? That was exactly how this new morning felt. Everything appeared the same. Yet everything carried new meaning. Don't skip. The next realization connected every chapter that came before. As they remembered your quiet presence in different moments, they noticed one quality that had never changed. Consistency. Not loud. Not attention-seeking. Just steady. Steady kindness. Steady encouragement. Steady sincerity. The world often celebrates what is immediate and obvious, yet the heart has a different way of measuring value. It remembers what remains. It remembers who brings peace instead of noise. It remembers those whose smallest gestures continue echoing long after the moment has passed. And that was the discovery they could no longer ignore. You had become part of those lasting echoes. Not through grand promises. Not through extraordinary events. Simply by being genuinely yourself. Something important is waiting for you. Because another question quietly appeared. What if the greatest gift someone leaves behind is not excitement, but peace? They paused. The answer arrived without effort. Peace allows trust to grow. Trust allows understanding to grow. Understanding allows appreciation to deepen. And appreciation changes the entire story. That realization filled the morning with quiet gratitude. For the first time, they were no longer focused on what they wished they had said. Instead, they appreciated everything that had already been shared. Even the smallest conversations now felt meaningful. Even the shortest moments seemed brighter than before. Stay till the end. There is still one beautiful piece waiting to be uncovered. As the hours passed, they found themselves smiling for reasons they couldn't fully explain. It wasn't because every mystery had been solved. It was because they finally believed that meaningful connections are strengthened by honesty, patience, and gentle understanding. Nothing needed to be forced. Nothing needed to happen ahead of its own time. The story itself knew how to unfold. That thought brought remarkable calm. Then, almost unexpectedly, another memory appeared. Not the biggest memory. Not the most emotional. Simply one quiet moment where everything felt effortless. Looking back, they realized something extraordinary about that moment. It was the first time they had felt completely comfortable being themselves. And somehow, when they remembered you, that same feeling returned. Not because you changed who they were. Because your presence reminded them that authenticity never needs to perform. It only needs to be lived. Don't leave just yet. The journey is approaching one of its most meaningful turns. As this new morning continued unfolding, they made one quiet promise to themselves. From this day forward, they would pay closer attention to the simple moments that most people overlook. Because yesterday had taught them something unforgettable. Sometimes the smallest moments become the brightest memories. Sometimes the quietest discoveries become the strongest foundations. And sometimes, One ordinary morning becomes the beginning of an entirely new way of seeing someone who has quietly mattered far more than words could ever fully express. Yet there remains one final realization they have not spoken, not because it is hidden, but because it deserves its own moment. When that realization finally rises to the surface, every reflection, every memory, and every peaceful discovery from this journey will come together with a clarity that neither of you could have imagined when this story first began.